All right, I am recording, sharing my screen. Good to go. Cool. Well, today I'm talking about urinary tract infections, bladder infections, because this is something that I have dealt with, like the whole mosquito bite thing. I'm not sure if you watched that video of mine, but I have dealt with it pretty much my whole life. I'm going to start out by talking about that. So let me change the frame. How do I do that? Stop share. So I can come back to me. Because the last video I did, I realized I was looking at the camera at the bottom, or the replay of me, instead of looking at the camera, and I looked like I was like talking to someone over yonder. So I'm going to try this when I have long shares like that. So I have had bladder infections pretty much since I was a little girl. They started, at least I consciously remember, they started when I was in kindergarten. And I think that was the first time that I felt fear of the loss of control over my body. I would have to constantly go to the bathroom, tell my teacher, like my mom would have to write a note and say that I would need to be allowed to go to the bathroom as many times as I wanted to, because I just couldn't hold it. And my parents took me to the doctor, and they just gave me many cycles of antibiotics, and it just never seemed to really get better. I remember one story that will stick with me forever. When I was in kindergarten, and there was a boy that all of us had a crush on. His name was Kyle. And I remember he stuck a straw in a Capri Sun, and he was like squirting it everywhere. And I thought it was so funny. And of course, you want to like impress the boy, so you laugh at what he's doing. And I remember I was laughing so hard that I peed my pants like just everywhere. And I was so afraid to stand up that when the bell rang, I waited for all the other kids to go in, and like I walked in last, and I had to go to the office. I had to call my mom, change stockings, and that happened all the time. I would pee my pants all the time. I know it's common for kids to pee their pants, but I just would have the burning and the urgency, and I just remember constantly having to go to the bathroom. So it was just no fun. So my point of that is I started out life having problems with bladder infections and urinary tract infections, and I remember the doctor really doing was giving me antibiotics, and I would still have them. So I remember when I was in college, I would again have them on and off throughout my life. And I remember when I was in college, I met a girl who also had them all the time. And I saw her talking to her doctor. She said she would get them like once every 2 or 3 months, which was way more frequent than I did. But she would call her doctor and just demand antibiotics. She'd be like, I know I'm getting a urinary tract infection. I know this is happening to me. I can feel the signs in my body and the symptoms. So just give me antibiotics. And every time they'd give her antibiotics. And I remember I tried to do that one time, and they gave me antibiotics. And now in hindsight, looking back, I look at just that whole process of getting a urinary tract infection and then getting antibiotics and constantly going through that, and I realize now that it was never the answer, right? Because I kept getting urinary tract infections as well as my friends. So there was never an answer for it, but for some reason I just was stuck in the cycle of doing that. And then I had a health crisis in 2015. I call it a health crisis. A couple things happened. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but one morning I fainted a couple times getting out of bed, and it was incredibly traumatic for me. I'd never fainted. It's actually not true. I fainted once before that, but it just didn't affect me for some reason back when I did before. This time, I just kept fainting every time I would sit up. I fainted 3 times in a row. My husband had to call the paramedics, and it really scared me because I had to go to the hospital. A paramedic in the ambulance was newer or didn't know what she was doing, and so she told me that she could read that I had a heart problem on the EKG. And then when I went to the doctor, they're like, oh, actually, that she was wrong. I'm like, okay. So I spent the whole ambulance ride thinking that there was something wrong with my heart, and that's why I kept fainting. It actually ended up being I just broke my toe, and I had vasovagal syncope, and I saw it, and I was dehydrated, and I got out of bed too quickly, and there was a number of factors there, so it made sense. But that set off a huge, what do you want to call it? Just I guess, waking up to my body, and I just became paranoid about my body after this experience. Like I was so hyper focused on every single thing that was going on in my body. If I was nauseous, if I had a little twinge here, if I had a headache or something, I was so hyper focused on it. It developed into hypochondria, and then I always thought I was dying. So that happened. For some reason, when this was all going on, I think I freaked out because I was on birth control for 8 years, and I didn't want to take any medication or be like dependent, as I viewed it in my head, on anything. And so I just cold turkey stopped my birth control at the same time this was happening. And I must have been going through something like an identity crisis, or I was just making a lot of changes. And so I actually quit my job. I was working as a forensic and litigation consultant. I quit my job out of nowhere and decided to pursue nursing, which was a complete shift for me. So I decided to do that, put myself through a vigorous academic program to try to get into nursing school. And I was studying like every waking hour of the day, no time for like breaks, holidays, celebrations, spending time with my husband or my family, my friends, nothing. I just devoted all of my life to studying. And so my body was under a lot of stress. The birth control, I think, removing that wreaked havoc on my hormones. I was deep in hypochondria, so I always thought I was sick. I was always hyper focusing on everything, and then just the stress I was putting myself through every single day, going through the academic program and then starting to work at a hospital, which was very stressful in and of itself. I think it just put my body on overdrive. So I did that for maybe 8 or 9 months, and then at the end of the year, end of 2015, I got really sick. And in hindsight, I don't even know if I actually got really sick. It's just my mind thought I was really sick at the time because I was perceiving everything so intensely. It was like nausea was the end of the world. I had stomach cancer. Or if I had a headache, it was going to be a brain tumor and I was going to die in a couple of weeks. It was just, everything was so heightened. The point of my story is, during this time, I went to urgent care, and they did all the tests, the normal tests they do, like your urine. I demanded an EKG and that was fine. And they actually the test showed up with leukocytes in my urine. And I thought, okay, I have a bladder infection. So they put me on antibiotics. And I didn't really know much about antibiotics at the time. In fact, I was just starting to learn about them in school. And so I didn't really think twice. I just went on antibiotics, and I went on a pretty harsh one, Augmentin, which is a broad spectrum, and it just wipes out all of your microbiome. Not all of it, but a good amount of it. And I went on that one. And, a week went by, and I was so deep in the process of hypochondria in my mind just constantly that I was never going to feel better, even if I was better at that time. It's just I was never going to allow myself to feel better with the control that I had over my body, my mind at the time. So I wasn't really feeling better. So I went back to urgent care, and they tested me again, and I still had leukocytes. So they're like, okay, that antibiotic didn't work, so we need to put you on another antibiotic. And so they did, and I took it. And I think the second one was ciprofloxacin. And I went through this cycle of that, and that I still didn't feel good. I still felt like fullness in my belly. In hindsight, I know I was creating all of these symptoms with my mind, and I can see that now. But at the time, I didn't know. And so I went back because I wasn't feeling good, and I was like, I need somebody to help me. And so they gave me a third antibiotic, which was called, I think, macrobid. And the doctor at that time was like, okay, so if you're not getting better after this third one, then we're going to have to figure out something else. It could be interstitial cystitis, which is kind of like what do they call it? It's kind of like an unknown, your bladder is just constantly inflamed, and sometimes it flares up and sometimes it doesn't. And there could be different triggers for it, and they don't really know how to fix it. Sometimes you have to go to a urologist. Some medication kind of helps, but generally it's a lifelong problem. And that really freaked me out because I'm like, okay, I'm going to have like this, it's like I'm already deep in hypochondria. I'm already thinking that I'm going to die every second of everything. And now I have an actual doctor telling me that I could have a real problem with my bladder. So I just really freaked out. But something did not feel right about the antibiotics and constantly taking them. And I started to dive into research just about my own body, about interstitial cystitis, urinary tract infections. And I found something incredibly interesting. I found something on interstitial cystitis, how it's kind of one of these, I want to say the word idiopathic, and I think that's the right word, but I'm not totally sure. One of these diseases where there's really no known cause, and a lot of times stress can be a big factor in it. So stress can inflame the bladder, it can inflame different parts of your body, of course, but in this particular condition, people that are really stressed out or have gone through trauma, their bladders can have flare-ups with stress, and then the bladder will produce leukocytes, and they can show up in your urine. So I'm thinking, okay, this is really interesting. I could have maybe not had a urinary tract infection that needed to be treated with antibiotics, maybe because of all the stress my body was going through and what my mind was putting my body through and all of that. Maybe that is what was causing my bladder to be inflamed and having all these unexplained, like, weird symptoms without being able to treat them, right? It just kept coming back and it kept coming back, and I didn't feel like what I was doing was working. And so I started to look into natural ways to support my body as opposed to just blitzing my microbiome with antibiotics, to only have the same thing keep happening and, continue to happen over time with no true cure to it or fix. And so I started researching, and I found this amazing supplement that now, ever since that day, so I have not taken antibiotics since that day in 2015. This was more towards the end of the healing crisis, or not the end, but the time I'm talking about was actually early 2016. So now it's been about 4.5 years. I've not taken an antibiotic, and I've never gone to the doctor for urinary tract infections. And in fact, I've done self-tests at home where I don't know if I had a urinary tract infection, but I had the same symptoms with my bladder that I was having back then. And I've done tests to show leukocytes in my urine. And then I've taken the supplement, and then the leukocytes have gone away and the symptoms have gone away within maybe 4 to 6 hours or so. So it was like a miracle for me to find. And I'm kind of going into it before let me share my screen again. So I went over my childhood, the health crisis I had that sort of woke me up to natural healing. And it's one of the biggest reasons why or I shouldn't say reasons, it's a motivation for me to start this channel, because I'm so excited about this stuff. It just has changed my life in so many ways. And then today I don't have to go to the doctors or anything. So let me just get into it. The remedy. So this supplement, D-mannose, is amazing with cranactin, which is just cranberry extract. This is a game changer. So D-mannose it's a simple sugar. It's found in fruits. I wrote them out here: apples, oranges, peaches, blueberries, and cranberries. Have my sources here too, in case you want to check. And so about 80 to 90% of the urinary tract infections that people are diagnosed with are caused by E. coli, which is a certain type of bacteria. That's important to know. Now, for the remaining, I found this on a website. For the remaining 10 to 20%, you'll probably need a biofilm disruptor, something with a biofilm disruptor. This isn't going to work for all of the UTIs, but since most of them are caused by E. coli, if you have a urinary tract infection that is caused, or a bladder infection of some sort that is caused by E. coli, this should work. It's worked for me across the board with every single bladder symptom that I've had. So what it does is it attaches to the E. coli in your ureters, and it causes them to stick to one another instead of the walls of your urinary tract. So then it allows your body to flush them out. So this can be used to treat and prevent. So I will take this if I feel like I'm susceptible to a urinary tract infection. That's things like when I'm sick. So if my immune system's down, I will take this sometimes if I feel like I'm susceptible, but more so like after I have sex, like I'll take this the next day, usually like 1 or 2 doses of it. And I do that. And you can use it to treat. So if you feel the bladder symptoms coming on, if you feel like whatever you feel, it's different for everybody. For me, I get burning when I pee. Sometimes I feel a fullness in my abdomen. And it's a certain feeling. And I think that feeling is a little bit different for everybody. So whatever your feeling is, as soon as you get that, you can take this. And I think the dose is two capsules. I just take them like as soon as I feel the symptoms, I'll take 2 capsules, and then I'll take usually two, I think, two daily. Yes. So I'll just take two for a couple days, and across the board, the symptoms have gone away in a couple of hours when I take this. It is remarkable. It is remarkable. And then I have no problems after that. And so, if for some reason this isn't working for you, I would look into maybe you have a urinary tract infection or a bladder infection with something that is not, or caused by something that is not E. coli. You may need a biofilm disruptor for that. So the next thing I would say is drink lots of water you should drink lots of water anyway. It's just good for your body, but especially when you're trying to flush the bacteria out. There's something in your body that is not productive for your body, and you want to get it out of you as quickly as possible. So I would say drink lots of water. Shoot for like a gallon a day when you're taking this supplement to try to get the infection out of your body. So down that water. And then a couple bonus supplements. So this is pretty interesting. I'm going to talk about these two things and then tell a story. So number 3 and number 4. So uva ursi is an herb, I think. I don't really know what it is, to be honest. I didn't do a lot of research on uva ursi. However, I found it on so many health websites that it's really good for the urinary tract and for urinary tract infections. It can be hard on the liver though. So you probably want to be cautious of it and take it for only 4 or 5 days. That's the recommended time frame to take it. So I've heard this is really good for the urinary tract. And vitamin C also is very good for the immune system. However, I just learned something recently on it, that because it's excreted in your pee and it's not fat soluble, I think your body doesn't hold on to it. And so you need to be constantly intaking it in order for it to constantly be working in your body, if I understand that correctly. And so this one, it's good for the immune system, but you're going to want to keep taking it. And there's different vitamin C's out there. Like I really like this Thorne brand because Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's someone I trust in the science realm, and she recommends this brand. But there's like timed vitamin C that you can take, where it's like it'll release half now and half later. So that's something to look into. But these are 2 bonus supplements. And then also I've read online to limit your sugar consumption if you have urinary tract infections or things going on with your bladder. Don't want to be like Buddy here, because the bacteria, they like to snack on sugar, and that's their food source, that's their fuel. And so if you remove that, in theory, it starves them and it's harder for them to live. They're weaker, they're more vulnerable, likely easier to kill them off. So what's interesting about this is if you go look at all stages. So this supplement, D-mannose with cranactin, drinking lots of water, uva ursi, vitamin C, and then limiting sugar consumption. So my husband was diagnosed with Lyme disease co-infections, Bartonella, a couple years back. So we went through a whole healing thing with him. But he would realize, so he was starting to have problems with his bladder. He would have to go all of a sudden and it would like burn. And he noticed those symptoms would come on when he would be eating more sugary foods, even foods like fruit or coconut palm sugar. When he would eat foods like that, he would start to have these problems with needing to go pee really fast, like having to go to the bathroom and having to find a bathroom and then it burning. And then interestingly, I had him take uva ursi, vitamin C, and I had him take this D-mannose, and then he just drinks lots of water anyway. And every time that would happen, it would then take the symptoms away. So those 3 things. So he'd back off from his sugar, he would take these supplements, and then every time his symptoms would get better. So he never had to take antibiotics, or we never had to go to the doctor. But every time he felt the flare up or he felt them coming on, he did this and it reversed. And that's been consistent for me across the board for myself ever since I figured this all out. And then every time I have a friend that has a urinary tract infection or something like this going on, I recommend this. And across the board with those people, they've had success and haven't had to go to the doctor or take antibiotics or anything. So this is pretty interesting. I wanted to share it. Again, I'm not a doctor. I shouldn't say again because I never said that to begin with, but I am not a doctor, and I don't know, I could cite studies and anecdotal stories and stuff, but this has worked for me, my husband, and everybody I've shared it with in my life. So I figured it was worth sharing if anybody else is struggling with this. And I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, it's closely tied to anxiety, and it's scary. It's scary when you feel the loss of control of a body function, especially something like, going to the bathroom, because it's, you're in a public place and you want to feel that control at least over your body. And so I know how horrible that feels. And I felt it as early as about 4 years old in kindergarten, and I think it's kind of stuck with me since. And so I think I just love control. So I always find ways to heal my body and feel like I have control over my body and my circumstances. So anyway, recap. So I am suggesting, do I want to say that? I'm not really suggesting because I'm not a doctor, but what I'm talking about here is when you have a urinary tract infection, whatever supplement or whatever signs your body is going through, try the D-mannose supplement. I'm going to link everything in the description, by the way. So the D-mannose supplement, drink lots of water. You can try uva ursi and vitamin C if that's something that interests you, if you want to kind of attack it from many different angles, but the D-mannose is by far the most important one. If you're going to do anything, do the D-mannose and lots of water. And then the uva ursi, vitamin C, and then limit your sugar consumption. And I would be curious to see if that doesn't wipe out your symptoms and make you feel better. If you end up trying this, certainly let me know. How do I stop sharing this? Because this is the end. Yep, this is the end. All right. If you end up trying this, let me know. I'm curious to see if this extends beyond my friends and family, to see if it works. I'm just kind of, honestly, I'm like a crazy person over here I had a huge healing crisis, and my body got so out of whack with anxiety, panic disorder, all these crazy unexplainable symptoms. And for the past couple of years, I've been doing lots of research and personal trial and error to figure out what the hell was wrong with me and how to fix all these different things I was going through. And this was one of them. And so I plan to just keep on sharing, what things have worked for me, maybe worked for other people, some research that I found that supports these things, and just see where this goes. So this was one thing that I found useful, and I'd be curious to see if it extends beyond, like I said, my friends and family. If it works for any of you, if you end up trying it, let me know. I love the feedback. So anyway, that's all for me on this topic, urinary tract infections. I think I think I covered everything I wanted to. Yep. Cool. All right, that's it for me today.